Hey team, wanted to make a video because I just finished another audiobook. It was called Familia by Lauren E. Rico, and it was a pretty good book. I wasn't sure what I was expecting, just because I've been reading a lot of um, more serious toned pieces, and so this one had kind of undertones of both um, mystery as well as um, uh, romantic comedy. And so it was something that I, it was a little melodramatic, a little kind of like a daytime or an evening soap opera, in that there was two sisters who were separated at a very young age, and one was sent to New York, and and one stayed in Puerto Rico. It was called Familia. They're both Hispanic in heritage. One stayed in Puerto Rico, and she lived in poverty. Her father fell to drugs and alcoholism, and the one who um, disappeared and ended up in New York, um, she had a very privileged life. She had two parents, and she, got to travel quite a bit, and she had a glamorous job, and she got to kind of spend the monies around. And she found out through a genetics test that she had a relative that was potentially a sister. The sister reached out, and so they decided to meet up. The New Yorker, they're Gabby and Isabella. Gabby is the New Yorker. Her born name was, I believe, Mariana. She was a fact checker. She wanted to be a writer. Super attractive boss who was not interested in her writing at all. We were hoping for a happily ever after, and that wasn't it. There is hope later on in the story, but I'm not going to give that spoiler, I don't think, at least not now, but she wants to be a writer, and she goes to Puerto Rico to kind of check in on this genetics test, and they do another one just to be sure, maybe a more in-depth one, to see if they are actually blood relatives. She meets all these family members that may be her relatives, and she kind of goes about investigating it as a journalist, with her potential sister, just figuring out, what happened to, because there was a story, her sister disappeared, and why, how, and her father had been beaten up trying to buy drugs, and so she was kidnapped by someone. Turns out, I'm not going to tell you because we find out spoilers pretty close to the end on some of that stuff, and I don't want to, I don't want to tell you all these things, but they kind of try to retrace those steps, figure out what was happening. There was a gang banger, a gang leader, that was kind of the head honcho in that area. So they had to figure out how he played into it, and they spoke with his wife, and she was the one there. We had a chapter or two from that perspective of, in the past what happened, and so they had the baby had been taken as kind of a blackmail piece, and so they had to try and protect the baby from the gang leader, because the gang leader would, look weak if he didn't murder this baby. And so they took the child, and there was this whole cover up of trying to keep everyone safe, who was part of hiding the child, and then they got the child out to safety using tourists who were there for like a Goodwill, Good Samaritan project. And so they took the child. They were, apprised of the situation. The police were in on it, and miscellaneous personages were in. They knew what happened, but it was this big scandal. What happened to Mariana? What happened to Mariana? Um, it was a big deal. They managed to get the baby out so that it wouldn't be murdered by the gang leader. And um, then they kind of puzzled that together. Throughout the story, there was strife between the two sisters because one was very well-to-do, well turned out, versus the one that was picking up the pieces, and she had been the victim of a crime, but she was also married and had all the rest of the family as well. So there were a whole bunch of different elements in the story. And that conflict was a big one, obviously, because what was the privilege, and Gabby ends up finding herself and finding her self-esteem and learning to write, while Isabella was a very established artist, though she it was street art, and it started out very illegal, and but it grew community together. And so they eventually she kind of found some closure on some of her own mental emotional traumas, also worked through it with her husband, because they kind of it kind of came up as as it would, meeting someone that you have expectations from and for, a potential sister, and the sheer economic, socioeconomic differentiation, it would be something that you would probably want to overcome. So it was, they played it out, and it was a pretty quick read. I think it was 11 hours audiobook, and it was not bad. It wasn't, there weren't any parts that were really, long or disengaging. There was a little bit of Spanish in it, which I think was good because I had picked it up hoping for some of that culture. As it is called Familia. It kind of touched on some, some socio-cultural, norms or differences between New York, which is a very arguably, expensive state, tourist state. It's, it's known worldwide. It's a global, global pull for people. So it's a very established state in a first world country, a global power, and versus like Puerto Rico, which is known to be more of a developing nation in socioeconomics, and so it's interesting how you always hear the stories of like the gang banging and the corrupt governments, and in association with the South American countries, and in literature, and I learned about such things in a class as well, but we don't hear too much about that in our current politics, our current political situation so much, because I feel like we have our sights on other places, and but that is a video for another time. I think I have made a video about my political opinions on this, so I would not mind having had a little less interpersonal and a little more cultural, or but it wasn't bad. It was and the mystery element, it did have me. came up with a few hypotheses. One of them, I don't believe that I was right. um, but it's it was cute. It was, I would say it was cute. Um, it's always tough reading about, some of the, some other people's traumas. This individual, one of the gals had been raped, and so that's always kind of hard to read about. A trigger warning. Um, and so that was something that they worked through, and um, so that one was kind of tough. But she used her art, and she tried to move beyond it. She had her support systems, and actually the people who did rape her were brutally murdered. And so that was another kind of side plot, side question mark of who actually did that. Are the good guys always so good, and is doing the right thing always with the law or with the good? And there's so much subjectivity there, that that is a whole nother conversation also. But it sounded pretty terrible, and so that was a tough one to kind of touch on. But that it was an all right book. Aside, that was kind of the darker element to it, and the gang culture. The gang culture wasn't. It was kind of glossed over, glossed into, glossed out of, and so that it kind of focused on the sisters and their cultural differences. And like I said, I wouldn't mind have seen a little more of the culture that they were in and up against, and kind of less about the nail side hustle and the buying the bikinis and the stuff from Walmart to stay in this honeymoon exclusive hotel. And so I would have liked to have seen it differently portrayed, but it was, like I said, it was an easy read. It was 11. There was nothing that was particularly disengaging, and it was only the 11 hours, so it was um, it was all right. It was all right. So with that, I'm going to stop this video. I hope you have a great day, and I will talk to you later.